opportunity for you as you're working through the recovery process and start moving into the restoration and claims process to be able to get your questions answered and figure out what to do next. And so Caden has assembled a team of professionals and experts in this stage of where some of you may be at. And so we appreciate you being here. We hope that we get all of your questions answered today. The process is that we're going to open it up for moderated questions first. So we have a series of questions that we've prepared to be able to walk our way through some of the different experts and professionals we have on the panel. Hopefully those answer your questions. Then what we'll do is we'll open it up for a Q&A at the end. So the only question that's not a great question is the one that you don't ask. So please take your time, ask as many questions as you feel necessary. We're planning on this coming until 6:30. I don't know that anybody has anything pending or that's pertinent, but we would be more than happy to stay as long as needed to make sure that you guys are set up for success as you move down the road navigating all of this. So we appreciate your attendance. And without further ado, what I'd like to do is just work our way down the table here and have an introduction so everybody knows who's on the panel today. So this is Todd Stern. Todd, if you could start. Who are you, sir? What's your company?
My name is Todd Stern. I'm the partner at Ordo Forensics. We're a forensic engineering firm licensed in 42 states across the country. I've personally been in this industry for about 24 years. First of all, been through this personally, so I know exactly where a lot of you are at, and it sucks. I heard a comment, just hurts, and I'm very empathetic to your situation. And so I'm very honored to be asked to speak on this panel and to answer any questions you guys might have during the process.
Todd, what's your company's role in a situation that these folks might be experiencing and going through right now?
Sure, there's two phases. So there's an emergency life safety concern, okay? And for those of you that are still in your homes and you have a life safety concern, that would be a step where you contact Caden, say, hey, is this valid? And then he'd make a phone call. You obviously, and we're going to get into this, going to contact your carrier. I am scared to be in my home. They'll send out an engineer, might even be our company, what have you. So that's the first step, right? So if you have a life safety concern, you can't email and call enough, all right? We always train our company to respond, not react. So there's some really, really important things there you need to do. Everything you do, trust but verify. You have a phone conversation, you follow up with an email. Make sure you include the claim number in the email every single time. It's a record of the phone call. And believe me, because you'll hear from everyone on the panel today, if those become pure gold for you in the future, okay? Thank you, Mr. Smith. Just to recap our conversation, these are the things you're going to do by this date. I wrote this down. It's on record.
So we just say you're on the front end, basically. Of
We're more or less going to be on the back end, depending on if I get a call from one of the other, the adjusters or the attorneys, what have you. So it's a both end. If it's life safety, we respond immediately, get things done. Then there's the how do we build this thing back. And we're going to go over those steps today as the panel progresses.
Yeah.
So.
Next is Caden Tinklenberg. Caden, if you could introduce yourself, company, and what your company does.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I am one of the partners at Swift Public Adjusters. We're a public adjusting firm. For those of you who don't know, public adjusters are, as our name implies, adjusters. But rather than working for your insurance company, we work for you. So you can hire us, and we will come and evaluate your property damage. We'll put together a estimate for what we think that damage is going to be. We'll look at your policy and determine what coverages you have, and then we'll submit all of that information to your insurance company. And then we'll go back and forth with them to attempt to negotiate a settlement. And if it's not looking like it's going to be able to get settled, we'll prepare that file either to turn it over to Tim or to turn it over to Steve. And they'll talk a little bit more about what that might look like.
And next we have Tim Johnson. Tim, if you could tell us the name of your company, what your company does, what your role is in this process.
Sure. My name is Tim Johnson. I'm a partner at the law firm of Smith, Jade & Johnson. We have offices all over the Midwest. We do a lot of different areas of law, but one of our primary practice areas is helping people whose insurance companies haven't properly evaluated or paid their claim. So we represent exclusively homeowners, business owners, in the event that the insurance company doesn't pay. So hopefully nobody is in the room at this point that needs me, but I've got a lot of good information that I can share about how you can never need me, which I know sounds counterintuitive, but my purpose here today is to give you some of the tips and tricks that I would be using if it was my own claim to make sure that we're properly documenting it, to make sure that we're properly holding the insurance company accountable. So to be clear, most insurance companies are trying to do their best, but every now and then they don't, and that's when I would come in.
Awesome, thank you. And then last but not least, Steve Shannon, if you tell us what your company is, what your role is in the process, what you do.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, Steve Shannon, local. I live here about a mile away from here. Watched a tornado approach my house and then veer off to the left and went up and around and got my friend's place. So sorry about that. I did record.
You're welcome.
I did record some of it, but I've been a contractor for 26 plus years. I do insurance litigation work. I testify as an expert. The insurance company is going to use a program called Xactimate to estimate your property damage. I'm a certified trainer in that. I was 27th in the world to be certified to teach that. So I teach that all over the place as well. I do property damage appraisal work. So after the insurance company's been out, if you have a dispute or a fight over how much or what is covered generally, people will call me for that too as well. And then I work with public adjusters, I work with attorneys, and I work with engineers as well. So.
Awesome, thanks guys. I think we have a broad breadth of professionals here, so let's start with the questions that we have. Caden, first question is, the insurance company is paying the limit that's listed in the declaration page. Is that all that they owe? Is all that they owe is just the limit that's stated on the declaration page?
Maybe, it depends. So every policy, every homeowner's policy is gonna have different types of coverages. You're gonna have coverage for your dwelling, it's generally called coverage A. Coverage for other structures, so if you have an outbuilding, for example, that would be under coverage B, other structures. Coverage C is your contents or personal property, and then coverage D is your additional living expense. So that's the extra cost that you have when you're displaced and can't live in your home anymore. Each of those coverages is going to have on the declarations page, which is at the top of every policy, a limit that's designated for each of those coverages. Most insurance companies will say, we will pay up to that limit of liability for damages that you incur or that you suffer underneath that coverage type. However, in some certain cases, your policy may include additional coverage. Common forms of that include expanded replacement cost, also called guaranteed replacement cost, or extended replacement cost. And that actually increases your limit beyond what's listed in your policy by 5 to 25%, or in the case of a guaranteed replacement cost policy, whatever it costs to replace your house. So, if you have a house that's a total loss and your insurance company pays that dollar amount that's listed on your deck page, they may owe more. They might not. You might not have that additional coverage, but they might. And if you don't know,
And most policies do.
most policies have some sort. It's not always a lot, but some do for that. Another example of that would be debris removal. That's oftentimes somewhere between 5 and 25% of that coverage A limit that they pay out in addition to that limit. So if you have a $100,000 limit and 10% of debris removal coverage, they owe you $100,000. And if you incur the cost, meaning if you actually spend above that limit for having your house torn down or the debris cleaned up, even if it's not necessarily your debris, if it's debris on covered property, they will pay above that limit for those costs. So to answer the question, if they pay the limit, that's not always necessarily the actual limit.
Mm-hmm. So if there's volunteers that maybe are getting a little more sparse as time goes on, it's possible they could hire a company to come handle the debris and
Absolutely.
possibly covered under their policy.
Absolutely.
Got it. Tim, here's a question. What's the most common mistakes that policyholders make in the claims process? the biggest mistake?
We only got an hour?
Let's just keep it, let's keep it down. That's pretty broad. Top two. Top two.
No, the most frequent mistake I see when a file gets to my desk is that the policyholder hasn't documented all of their damages. So it's really important to take pictures at the time of the accident, obviously, and as many as you can take. There is no too many pictures. But also, when you're dealing with the type of losses that y'all are dealing with, the contents inventory is always a big deal. And by that I mean sort of cataloging your stuff that got damaged and needs to be replaced. That is a tall task, and it's hard to do if you think about everything that's in your house. It is a very tall task, but that is a thing that often gets put on the back burner and it doesn't happen for months. And most policies have strict timelines about when you can submit those things and how you should submit them. So documentation is a really big problem. The other one is if your insurance company is making a request for information from you, you've got to cooperate. Every policy has a duty to cooperate, and that duty, unfortunately, if you fail that specific duty, that's an absolute bar to the claim, and that means that you don't get any money, and in fact, in some instances, it means they can take money back. So cooperation is really important, which isn't to say that you can't take your time in getting stuff, putting your life together, but if the insurance company is requesting documents, their ability to get that information from you is very broad under the policy. They can get financial data, they can get your taxes, they can get your inventory stuff, they can get your receipts. So if they're making a request for documentation or information, it's important that you cooperate. And if it seems like an onerous request, or if it seems like they're trying to trick you into something, that might be time to talk to somebody like Katie or I. But documentation and cooperation are usually the areas of sticking points.
Why would they ask for your taxes?
In fire losses, this is really common,
Oh, okay.
because some people burn their own houses down.
Oh.
And they use that to prove financial motive.
Okay.
So in your claims, that would be very unlikely. I don't think anybody thinks that you
Right.
summoned a tornado to your house.
You did the tornado dance.
Although you did nicely do that for Steve.
It's like, not that way.
Yeah, so they might look into your finances. But no, that's more common in fire claims.
Okay.
It wouldn't be common.
So Todd, to piggyback off of that, what should homeowners do to show the prior condition of their home?
Sure.
Everything that they can do on that end.
So, I've just been in numerous claims such as this, and let's say you had a nice painting, old flag, whatever, and there's an X value on it, or you had it appraised, but they had no documentation of it. Your past photos of the condition of your home is crucial.
Old videos.
Old videos,
Things like
photos, those type of things.
Real estate listings.
Exactly. Real estate listings is a great one. And from our perspective, it gives it's the exact picture of the pre-loss condition of your home. That's a really, really important piece. Because if you have a crack above X, it doesn't matter where your crack is. So oftentimes, for those of you that didn't lose your home entirely, but what's that?
Carry on.
Who didn't lose their home entirely, but it's what they call a rack. It's twisted. There's going to be multiple facets of your home that are cracked, wrecked, may even be structurally, that would be a structural failure if it was completely wrecked, but there may be components to your home that are structurally not sound. And in that regard, if you have pictures before what that room looked like, and then after, it really helps. Does that make sense?
What do they say it is instead of tornado damage oftentimes?
Well, they're going to blame settling, right? Settling's a thing. You have to eliminate it, right? So you have to consider there's been roughly 5,000 people impacted by this. Some people in the direct path are obviously much more impacted than somebody out here where it just kind of just nicked it, if you will, right? So you can't call everything tornado damage, and that's part of what the carriers got to do is segregate damages. It's important. But at the same time, if you have those photos and that proof, it helps a ton.
So when should a homeowner, like you said, there's some that were in the direct path, there are some that were kind of on the fringes.
Sure.
When does a homeowner know that they need to hire an engineer? And what about just relying on the insurance company's engineer?
Sure. So we do both sides, both the carrier and plaintiff work, if you will. always let your carrier send out whoever they feel is equipped to work on the home. In order to get your PE, professional engineer license, it's usually 9 to 10 years. Those guys they're sending out there are not ignorant. They know what they're looking at, okay? Now, one of the big things to document, and Tim, Kate will definitely tell you this, is if they're there for 10 minutes and then write an entire report on your home, there's a good chance they missed something. So like with our company, I let my guys, they clock in with us. I know how long they're on every property. Because look, if you're looking at 5 to 10 houses a day or whatever their assignment is or for the week, that matters. And like when we go out, we do 2 houses a day. That's it. I'm not gonna spend. Your guys' lives are completely upside down, you know. And if we can inspect a third, that's great. But typically, we just do 2 houses a day. You got to do a thorough inspection. Both an interior and an exterior inspection are required on a tornado claim, 100%. I don't know if most of you know this or not, but buildings are engineered from the outside in, not the inside out. So you have a dead load and a snow load, which is your live load. That's actually pretty easy to calculate, but it's the shear forces, the wind forces, that really these buildings are engineered for. And so if you have negative air pressure blowing against the side of your home, which you did, and it begins to open it up and goes inside your home, it becomes positive. So now, just like your car has an intake, it has to have an exhaust. So for those of you familiar, inspect your soffits on the outside of your home. If they've been blown out, start there. Really good indication that you had negative air pressure enter your home and become positive. So you have an entry and an exit. Yes, sir.
How do those pressures affect the windows? How do you determine whether pressures have impacted the windows that are still intact?
It's a great question.
And how do you check for it?
Sure. So there's 2 things you can do. There's key indicators on any home that are going to show where you have cracks. Now, if your cracks are perfectly vertical or perfectly lateral, that's not a good indicator. As soon as they start going diagonal or just an odd shape, that shows that you've had some sort of movement within the framing, the wall structure of the home, right? So as soon as you start testing, you're going to start to see your windows fog up, which is going to show the
windows.
What's that? So the windows are just going to fog up.
The windows are gone.
It's tornado jokes.
So there's no windows in your house, but your windows will be fogged up. They'll start to fog out immediately, which is really important. Oftentimes, when you walk back in your homes, you guys know your homes very well. I'm just going to use one of these posts or whatever. You're going to really see a lot of failures around load-bearing areas in your home. Okay, there's going to be it's almost going to be like a spider web in some cases, or very prominent cracks. Okay, that's one thing to look at. On the exterior of your home, typically the interior is going to match in some way, shape, or form, especially if it's been affected on the load-bearing section of your home. Did that answer your question?
I'm mostly focused on windows that from 10 feet would pass the test. Big glass windows,
Yes.
zero things, don't crank open properly. That seems to be an issue, I think, with a lot of people here. When you repair, when you replace.
So in your frames of your windows, this is a great question. So in your frames, they'll literally be cracked. So if you can't open or close your windows, your window frame has been compromised. So even though the glass didn't get broken, if your windows don't open after the tornado, you've got a serious issue. It didn't just magically happen, right? So when your home twists or racks, okay, the frames rack. And so if your windows aren't opening, they're going to be cracked in some way, shape, or form, or deformed.
Doors not opening.
Doors not opening, same thing. So take a level, for example. I wish I could demonstrate this. If you have like a 2-foot level or 4-foot level, depending on the size of the window, put it against the frame, you're going to see a gap. Okay, where it should be straight, should be flush all the way across that. Take a photo of the gap, follow me, of how much that window frame is bent.
That's one issue. What about, he's asking about my house, what about the windows themselves? I've got Anderson windows that have kind of level up. None of them are like fractured. Some of them have cracks, some of them got hit with a shingle. How do you assess whether there's too much pressure in my house? I have some soffits out, my roof lifted a little bit. How do I assess that window? Because they send people out to assess our window over there for a brief period of time. Measure it. Is there another way to do that?
Yeah, so your ASTM test will be a big part of that. Usually in a case like this, you had a sudden and accidental event. There's no other explanation as to why that window isn't functioning and why.
Properly, right?
What's that?
Yeah, why it's not functioning properly.
Yeah,
So,
I mean that's
That
that.
is an ASTM test.
well, so you're not gonna be able to do that, so that's gonna be an engineer thing.
Sorry,
right?
I had to
So-
go
Do I need to get an engineer out?
Well, so.
Well, let me
I
jump
just-
in real quick, Tim, and
Yeah.
just for the sake, we've got a lot of questions that people may not have
Yeah.
specific to that type of topic.
Okay.
So remember, the purpose of the
Yeah.
panel is to make sure that everybody has access to these guys, where you can grab their information, have some
You're
follow-ups and
100%
things like that, yeah.
welcome to reach out to any one of us.
Yeah,
Quick
so if
free
you have
advice?
questions, by all
Yeah, I
means,
was
write
gonna say,
those
we can
down.
still help that.
Yeah, quick free advice, the folks at Anderson are great, I bet they would come out.
Yeah, that's what I would do. I would start with Anderson first, and have them come look
I've
at
had
it.
a ton of great experience with clients who had Anderson.
Likewise.
Yeah, I would start there.
Likewise.
So to that point, Tim, when is the, a question that I had, I'm sorry, Steve, is when should people consider when hiring a contractor? Because some of this is pretty technical information that would be beneficial to be able to pass on to the insurance company or to a public adjuster, things like that, right? So
Right.
what do you consider kind of when you're starting to, that's a process we need to start talking about because people are getting busy,
Right.
right? Phone calls are being made, so what does that look like?
Yeah, so whenever you get damage, most of the time, the first person you're gonna call is gonna be a contractor, right? Depending on the level of damage that you guys are getting, I would assume you're gonna wanna hire a general contractor, someone that can handle all of the repairs or at least manage all of the repairs. So that's the type of contractor you're gonna look for. The contractors are gonna be vital, right? Especially like when you're looking at windows. They're the ones that are gonna tell you how to fix it, right? Like what's broken, how to put it back together again. The engineers are gonna be vital to that. If the contractor isn't able to answer your question, or they need to go to another step just to prove the damages, that's when we hire someone like an engineer.
And a good contractor knows when to do that.
Yeah, and a good contractor should know when to do that. You've got everybody up here, you can contact any of us. You can contact me too, I live down the street, right across from Stratford, so, and we can give you some advice to move that along.
The most important thing that's been said so far is hire a general contractor, not a roofer. Especially a local contractor that knows the codes. I can't stress that enough. I mean, we get paid to know the code. It's just our job, whether you use it or not. But from a repair protocol, a general contractor is going to be able to take care of you. And I see this all too often. See, everybody up here seen this where an event comes in and out of town guys come in and try and just fix your roof and get going. I beseech you to hear me on that. That's the best thing that's been said. You hire a general contractor who's local, who knows the codes, and is going to have local trades to help you guys out. Because it's not just your roof. And I stress that to everyone in this room, for those of you that have a house.
So we've got a general contractor that comes out, he's making a really good assessment of the scope of the damage that's been done. The insurance company's adjusters come out, they're working up their scope. Caden, when do you bring a public adjuster into that conversation? What is a public adjuster, just so everybody knows, first of all?
Yeah.
And then when should they consider maybe bringing someone like yourself into the conversation?
Yeah, like I said earlier, we're adjusters, right? We look at damages, apply it against the policy, and present a claim to your insurer. You can bring us in really at two key points. First is as soon as possible, right? There's never a too early to bring us in if you want a professional to manage your claim, right? If you're too busy, if the damages are too complicated, if you just don't have time for it, whatever the case is, you can hire us and we will come in and we'll handle every aspect of your claim. We'll know what experts you need, we'll know where to get good quotes from good contractors to make sure that you have enough money to do the repairs. We know when it's time to call an attorney, all of that stuff. We know the laws, etc. So if you want your claim professionally managed, it's never too soon to hire a public adjuster. The second time is once you have a dispute with your insurance company. So if they've provided you an offer or denied your claim, or they're taking just way too long, that's a dispute. And most people aren't equipped or don't have the energy or mental fortitude to take on a big insurance company. That's what we do for a living. It's not personal for us, and we can separate that very well and handle those disputes appropriately. So that's the second time is once you've had a dispute with your insurance company, call us up, we'll take a look. If we think your insurance company is right and, you know, you're in just have a bad policy or whatever the case is, we're gonna tell you. But if we feel like you have a case, we'll likely take your claim on and help you out.
I have a question for everybody. How many of you ever read your policy in full?
I have now.
You have now, right?
2 days ago.
Yeah.
2 days ago.
Because I've been through what you guys have done, I hired, and I'm in the industry, I hired a public adjuster because I didn't fully read, I mean, I read it, skimmed it, but the fact is, there's late payment penalties and things. A public adjuster speaks insurance. Even though I'm in the industry, don't speak insurance as well, right? So number one, they speak insurance, none of y'all out here do, and it's just part of the course. Number two, your general contractor can't talk about the policy. So having an advocate so for example, on my claim, they didn't make a payment within the 30 days they were required to. So the public adjuster added 17% because they paid me my claim in 47 days.
That's
So-
Texas, that doesn't apply.
I know, I'm just
Yeah.
I'm just saying those are
That was not in my policy.
it's an example.
Yeah.
Hear me out. I'm
Yeah.
just saying I had no idea that was even a thing, right? And I'm in the industry. But I'm sharing this with you because you all have careers and jobs. And you're really good at what you do, but you don't speak policy. So in a situation like this, we're not talking about a hail claim, we're talking about your home. Completely devastated, right? Hire somebody that knows what he's talking about, can read and understand your policy.
What do those services cost and who pays for them?
Yeah, so generally it's a percentage of the total claim, depending on the situation. It can vary. Nebraska law does have a 10% fee cap for public adjusters on claims that are the result of a declared disaster, and that's calculated on the total value of the claim. So in no situation for any claim that happened on April 26th, including hail claims, can a public adjuster charge more than 10% of your total claim value.
So if we're gonna get to Q&A here in just a couple more questions, so then the question is, when does the attorney need to get involved? Like we were talking about, maybe a situation where you feel like they haven't been represented well, Caden gets into the mix, starts looking at that a little deeper level, he's working through the process, still running into some hurdles. When do you get involved in that process?
Well, since we're live, and I'm sure my partners are watching, you should hire an attorney. You should hire an attorney right now. I got a stack of Dave's gonna agree with me. I'm just kidding. The reality is that there's sort of like a public adjuster. There's a couple of times when you can hire an attorney. If you've got a massive commercial loss, those policies are pretty complex. You might consider hiring an attorney or a PA early on in the claims process to submit it. When we're talking about a residential loss, which I assume most people here are dealing with, probably you're not going to hire an attorney until the insurance company has made a coverage determination that you think is wrong. If you've got a good contractor that does enough insurance work, they'll sort of know when they're at the end of the road with the carrier. Oftentimes, if you're working with a public adjuster, they will know when they're at the end of the road. But I'm the guy who comes in when they say no and they shouldn't. So if you are at the point where you believe you should be getting some coverages and you're not, and your contractor or your PA isn't able to get them further, that's the time that I come in. Of course, you could hire me at the beginning of the claim, but for most people, your insurance companies are probably not right away, but eventually going to do right by you, and you probably don't need an attorney until the time that they say no when they shouldn't. And when will you know? Hopefully, your contractor will tell you, your PA will tell you, or if you're wily and you're sort of, you know these things, and you know they haven't extended a coverage or haven't paid enough for the damage to get it fixed, that would be the time to give someone like us a call.
And Steve, there's also an appraisal part of this whole process, so how does that differ from what maybe Tim might do, and what is an appraisal, and if you could explain to the folks here what that looks like.
Yeah, so in your guys' policy, so we've talked about the litigation side. There's also an alternative, what they call an alternative dispute resolution, which is the appraisal provision in your policy. It basically allows us to take that, allows you to hire an independent person like myself. The insurance company hires an independent person. So we get two new people come to the process, and we're able to try and resolve that issue or that dispute without going through the litigation process. We then choose an umpire and then we'll come out, both appraisers will come out and actually appraise, just like, kind of like a real estate person would come out and appraise your real estate, we appraise the property damage itself. So we'll actually come out and look at all the damages, we look at the engineer reports. If we need to get an engineer report because maybe you didn't hire one, then we'll let you know, okay, well, we need an engineer report to see if they agree or disagree with the original engineer, things like that. So we're basically, instead of doing the litigation, you go through that appraisal process. Generally speaking, it's more cost effective and it should take less time to do that.
Yeah, and to be clear, that appraisal process can only establish the amount of damage.
Correct.
It can't answer coverage questions, so if the insurance company says, hey, we don't cover that or we don't pay for that, you still might need both of us. But in most of your situations, if you get to a point where you haven't resolved the price dispute or you just disagree about how to make a repair, that's the process. He's right. It's quicker, it's cheaper, it's intended to be out of court. None of you are there yet, I doubt, but eventually keep that in mind.
Yeah, and another thing to mention here in Nebraska is that both parties have to agree to participate in the appraisal process. Most other states, it's obligatory, so if one party demands, the other has to participate. Nebraska is not that way. Both parties have to agree. So if for some reason your insurance company wants to go, but you don't have to. But likewise, if you want to go, the insurance company doesn't have to. So that happens sometimes, and unfortunately in those situations, we often end up resorting to legal action.
Sorting.
Well,
Yeah, and generally speaking, I mean, with the losses that you guys are facing, I would find it hard to believe they would say no. I mean, they can say no, but I mean, it's not a normal just hail claim, and there's only certain carriers that deny. I mean, we do plenty of appraisals in the state of Nebraska, so, I mean, you could always ask for it, and again, if they do say no, then you know your only other option at that point is litigation.
absolutely.
Right.
Another thing to clarify what you mentioned. It's not a real estate appraisal. Don't go.
No,
hire a real
yeah,
estate
yeah, no, you're
appraiser.
not hiring
You
a
will
real
not
estate-
get a good outcome.
No, yeah,
So-
for sure, yeah. And I'm just trying to let you guys, try and say something that you guys understand, or, you know, like if they're gonna come out and say, my property value is this, we're saying property damage value, right? Like what was broke, and this is how much it is to fix it.
Awesome. Let's open it for Q&A, and just for respect to everybody that's here, I'm sure y'all have a lot of
But
questions.
good call.
We'll try to keep it down to kind of some straightforward answers. Might kind of jump in. And if you have additional questions or need more information, by all means, make sure that you connect with these guys before you take off. So if you have a question, throw your hand up. Yes.
I was just going to piggyback off of the when to know when to bring a contractor in. Behind that, how do you know? You were talking about the difference between a general contractor and a roofing contractor. How does one know the difference? And are there different licenses in Nebraska for that? Are there?
Yeah, I'd do that. So there are roofing contractors that are general contractor. I own Valley Boys Roofing. We were a general contractor as well here in the state of Nebraska for, like I said, 26 plus years. So just because they do mainly roofing doesn't mean that they can't handle. We do all work. We do interior, exterior, the whole nine. There are builders, so some of you have newer homes, right, that maybe were completely demolished. You may call your builder. The problem that I would have with the builder's side of it is they don't understand the insurance, the intricacies that insurance contractors like the roofing guys or people like myself. So they're not going to maybe document quite properly and take the photographs. So you would need a public adjuster in that case. 100%. If you're going to go with your builder, you need to hire someone else to manage that claim, especially for documentation purposes alone. But so I wouldn't shy away. I would just make sure that they can do all the work and they have experience doing all the work and they can manage it. Some of you lost all your contents. There are companies that specialize just in doing contents, all your clothing. They'll take it all and inventory everything for you and come up with a pricing. So there are contractors out there that can help you do all these different steps of the process.
Next question.
In regards to structural engineers, you know, the insurance company's gonna bring out their own. If we don't agree with them, and I asked you this question, we can get a second engineer in there, but you kinda made it sound like they're gonna stick with their guy no matter what.
Nope. No, not at all.
For the sake of the live, if you could repeat the question in general.
So the carrier sends out an engineer, and you have a problem with the engineer or dispute the report. Make sure you run it by a professional person. Make sure your concerns are valid. Number one. Whoever's managing the claim, they would reach out to me. Whether it be a public adjuster, your general contractor, or an attorney. And then we would go in and do our own evaluation and write a separate report. in regards to that, oftentimes we'll walk into buildings, homes, and there's the fractures we were talking about earlier, but none of the sheetrock's off the wall. So we can't assume that there's a structural failure there. It appears to be, but until that sheetrock's removed, so we can actually see what's failed, we can only guess. And so, please note when these guys show up, have your general contractor have a crew there, and if he's going, this is damaged, well, I don't know, I can't really see what's behind it. Great, I have a contractor here, he'll take it off so he can see the damage. Oftentimes these guys have so many assignments, they'll go through and just make photographs of everything, and then you get a report back that says, well, it could be settling, the sheetrock was on the wall. They didn't know that. So
be careful doing that.
Yeah, I was
You
gonna
do.
say, yeah.
You do, but at the same time, there's times and places where we get reports, and there were a bunch of cracks in the wall, and they couldn't verify the damage was or wasn't. So, when you have somebody there to manage your claim, that's going to be a big part of your success. At the end of the year.
I would like to add a little bit more to that.
Yes.
I think there's more to what you're getting here. I'll be respectful to Todd and say that engineers do go through a lot to earn their degree. We end up disputing engineer findings from carriers frequently. So I don't think they're all good. So with that in mind, if your carrier wants to send out an engineer, do some research on that engineer. Look them up. Look up the name of their company. Ask for their resume or CV. Insurance company won't always give it to you, but at least you have it on record asking for it. If they're, if the firm that they work for doesn't have very good reviews, there's probably a reason for that, right? And so if it's a firm that you don't feel comfortable having come out to evaluate your house based upon feedback that you've received from other people or from the internet, ask for someone else, right? They don't have to honor your request, but you can certainly ask for someone different. But at the end of the day, the insurance company does have the right to send out whoever they want, but you also have the right to, ask for someone else or, voice your opposition to that.
Awesome, thank you. Yes.
And some piggyback on that. Are they biased?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Over in the far back corner there.
Go ahead.
What if your insurance company has said that you don't need an engineer to come out? Can I demand that an engineer comes out, or would you recommend that I hire my own engineer to come out? Or what would be that process?
Well, go ahead.
Well, okay, yeah, so, in the insurance world, most policies have a duty that's placed upon the policyholder to prove their damages or to present their claim, right? So if an insurance company doesn't want to do their own investigation, arguably they may not have to. Now, realistically, almost every insurance company does do an investigation of types, but in a situation like that, I would recommend hiring a public adjuster and an engineer to come out and evaluate that damage and present that to the carrier. Because now they're on notice, right? They've received that information. They can't ignore it. They have to do something to investigate that claim that you're making. And 99% of the time, that's going to be them sending out their own engineer or relying upon the engineer's report that you provided if it is convincing to them, which it should be.
But they don't have to hire you one.
No, they don't have to hire anyone.
No. Should be an out-of-pocket expense.
Correct. Yep. It might be reimbursable in certain circumstances, but definitely don't rely on that.
Next question.
When should an insurance company provide the determination with the status of your home? Is there a time frame? Because we're going on almost 4 weeks coming up, and every week we get a new date.
Yeah, in Nebraska, the time frame is reasonable, and to give a little bit of, that's the legal standard, is a reasonable amount of time. But to give a little bit of grace to the insurance companies, that's a lot bigger loss than they were probably prepared to handle in quick speed. So that it's taken a month or two wouldn't surprise me.
Two?
Well, when you consider the amount of investigation that goes into reviewing loss that is partially total or almost total, I mean, they might need 6 different experts to get out there and figure out if it's safe to live, if it's structurally sound, how do we fix this roof, are these materials discontinued, those types of things. It can take a little while. So I know that that's not comforting, but I would expect that they were not prepared for that level of loss in this area, so they're probably having to bring people in from out of state to help adjust it, and that's probably part of the plan.
One way you can speed that up is by hiring your own people to prove your own loss, right? If you put together your proof of loss package and you submit that with a document called a proof of loss, that starts a clock for the insurance company. And they have a reasonable amount of time to review that proof of loss and respond to it. And if you are presenting them all the information that they need to make their claim determination, they're not going to be able to make the argument that they need another 60 days to investigate because you provided them all the information, right?
Does that start a theoretical clock?
I have a
so to say?
question.
It does.
Right.
It does.
So you're saying that nobody's been to your house? Is that what you're saying?
Oh,
No insurance?
they've been,
adjusters
but they
now?
say that it's went to the region now, that the managers approve it with the region, and then they're supposed to have a meeting with the region and the VPs to approve it, and then that didn't happen because now they wanna send a furnace inspector, then they wanna see if they can pull tile from my house, and all these things, and it's a delay, and it's gonna be this next week, it's gonna be this next week, so. And it was supposed to be today, we had an answer.
Sounds like we have the same adjustment.
I see the crowd getting fired up a little bit. Yes, ma'am.
Question I had is, they're gonna pay you out, say whatever dollar amount, insurance companies won't pay anything prior to that?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, a partial
RCB versus.
Oh, partial payment. Oh, okay. Are you talking about the actual cash value payment with depreciation withheld,
No,
or?
I'm talking that say about, this is really small, but say your value is $500,000, and it's actually not a destroyed home.
Okay.
It's anybody say it's just partial repairs going on, and those partial repairs are happening.
Yep.
Is the insurance company gonna get any money prior to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
And how,
It
is there a form
Well,
that they require?
yeah, so the question to you would be is have they given you an estimate of damages? Have they come out and said, I believe the damages to be X dollar amount? Have they done that?
No,
Okay,
You
so
just
then,
hired a
so then-
contractor and just got started, is that?
we have a contractor, yes.
so then you need to answer that question, what she
Yeah.
needs to do before she has a contractor fix that and make sure the
Yeah.
insurance company gets out there.
Lot to unpack there, yeah.
And
Does that
the
make
question
sense?
being is because it was partial damage, of course you had to get it covered, right? We're talking right.
Temporary.
Or temporary repairs,
Yeah.
you gotta mitigate damages, right?
So those bills have come in.
Sure.
So for an insurance company to start paying those bills,
So
Yeah.
they have 15 days from the date that they determine that they're liable for those damages.
15 days from the date they're liable.
From the date that they determine that they are liable, right? So generally, they're gonna determine that, they should determine for something as clear cut as a TARP invoice for an incurred cost.
Yeah.
They should make that determination in 15 days.
From what date?
The date that they are supplied with that information. So if you send in an invoice to them and explain what it's for, and it's clear, and you tell them that you paid this,
Okay,
give them 15 days to respond to you,
okay.
right? If they haven't responded to you in 15 days, that alone is a breach of their statutory duties in Nebraska.
And also tap into your
What's the
agent.
consequence?
They can help them out.
1 second, folks, yes, sir.
I have an odd one for you. You said you worked with the program or the matrix system of how they pay people.
Exactly.
Oh, exactly, how the price, yeah. Yep.
So, I think, this is just me throwing this out there, most times when there's tornadoes and stuff, it's probably maybe in a lower class area or trailer courts or stuff. These are big houses, these are expensive houses. These guys are trying to use that matrix program, which is about half of what good contractors are charging.
So,
How do you go about that?
That's a great question.
that is a good question. So, again, it depends on the expert that you hire as well, right? Because there's roughly 15,000 line items within Xactimate, and there are different levels of grade material. But there are some specialty items that just aren't allowed in Xactimate, they don't have it, so
And
that.
that
where you would-
Xactimate is not good at also.
Or maybe like Windows, for example, you know, Xactimate's not great at Windows, so if you've got Anderson Windows, you're gonna have to get an Anderson contractor to come out and give you a bid.
Right.
But generally speaking, you know, there are quite a few items that are, able to be used in Xactimate that generally I find are gonna be fairly reasonable, but again, there may be 3 different line items for the same thing, it's just a different grade of material, and if they're not using the right grade of material for that line item, then it's going to be cheaper, or it's gonna be less than what you're expecting.
Really important to hear it's an estimate,
Yes.
not the law,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So like, bringing in someone like him to come in and review their estimate,
Right.
right? It's not the Bible.
Right.
It's very important to hear that word estimate.
It's a tool.
It's a tool, and somebody who knows how to use the tool, like him, can be incredibly resourceful to all of you guys. I want to touch on one thing, because I think you mentioned this. When they send out their engineer, find out if he's a mechanical or structural engineer. So when you request the resume, find out what his undergrad is. Is it a mechanical or structural? You had a structural failure on your roof. Right? So my company, we have both. We have mechanical and structural engineers. Okay? Really, really important that they can send out a monkey if they feel he's qualified. Hear me out, that's fine. But just know you follow up the email. This is really important. You sending a mechanical engineer out to document a structural failure. I just want to make that part of our file, right? So know what they study. If you have an engineer that's never designed a house, and certainly didn't take classes on learning load and load path and all the different things we have to consider, don't know if that expert's going to be qualified. And in a disaster like this, I see the carrier unfortunately react more versus respond by sending the proper people or the most qualified, right? And so when you're advocating on yourself, on behalf of yourself and your property, make sure that the experts they're sending are actually experts in the field they're going to inspect.
Question? Yes.
I'm just trying to find out how to expedite the appraisal process.
The appraisal or the adjustment?
Well, just the adjustment. I
Yeah.
mean, we're good,
The
yeah.
the
We can't
quickest.
get nothing done because we don't know where the money's at, right?
Mhm.
They're not giving us allotment for the dock or, for the, you know, there's just so many stuff. How do I expedite that?
Yeah, the quickest way is to do it yourself rather than relying upon the insurance company to adjust your loss. You should adjust your loss for them. And if you don't have the experience to do that, you should work with a public adjuster. That's the truth of it.
Well, when you say adjust, when you're talking various dollars for the roof.
Adjustment is the process of
The
presenting
totality
a
of the claim.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's all parts of it, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't have the experience or skill or the time or the mental, capability to do that, you should hire a professional if it's a significant amount.
There's a contractors, I just can't get nothing done. And I'm,
Yep.
homeowners right here, and I can't get nothing done because I don't know. I have no idea where everything's at.
Well, there's another way, and it's to be very annoying, and that's to email and call once a day. Never be mean and disrespectful, those people have a lot on their plate. Do not underestimate how quickly the squeaky wheel gets oiled.
Yeah, and I would say if you haven't involved your agent, get your agent involved, and they'll usually advocate for you as
So do
well.
we get a public adjuster involved, get your card, tell them this is where we're gonna go, and then maybe get a flyer underneath their butt, just to kind of.
I mean, I wouldn't.
Like you said, squeaky wheel.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend threatening things. I wouldn't recommend
Right,
to
so
threaten
that's
a
why we
public
just-
adjuster or threaten an attorney. If you're
No,
gonna
it's
go
so-
that route, just do it, right? And we'll let the insurance company know that we're involved and we're taking things over now, and we mean business. Yeah.
Do you provide a service, the service you've talked about, the expertise for the program, in addition to hiring the subs to put the roof, the siding? Are there independent services, or is that part of what you provide if you have the contract to do the work to rebuild the home?
So generally, your contractor would do that work for you, right?
So your service would be in addition to that?
So mine would be in addition, and mine is more specifically the appraisal process. So after you've reached that dispute with the insurance company where they say, let's say it's, whatever that dollar amount is, it's 50,000, and you say it's 250,000, or your contractor says it's 250. That's when we would do the appraisal process to
Yeah,
resolve that dispute.
And that's something you can talk about with your contractor, right? Like, Steve's a level 37 mage and Xactimate.
That's no
But
joke.
your contractors, if they do this kind of work, they should have significant experience. Many of them are actually certified
Yeah.
in the software which you train on. So if they have never heard of Xactimate or they don't know how to use it, they're probably not somebody that does a lot of insurance work. Doesn't mean they're a bad contractor, but it is useful in that situation to have somebody who understands the software so they can communicate easier with the insurance company who uses that software.
Yeah, feel free, my card's up there, you can call me and we can talk afterwards.
The contractor that worked it through a restoration process, not only somebody that got affected by a storm, but was a contractor working in other people's homes. We didn't do restoration work as a primary function, but we ended up with 100 files on our desk because I was a local guy. But what I found very quickly is that if you don't understand the restoration process, you're in for a big, big learning curve as a contractor. So immediately we had to seek out professionals in Xactimate that were able to work through what our assessment of the damage was and that could turn it into insurance talk.
It's like an additional level of expertise.
Right, and that was critical to that process, but what we also find was usually those line items weren't enough to be able to allow us to get that homeowner restored back to the condition that they were in. And then there began this long negotiation process of seeking bids and Anderson windows and finding these specialty line items that they didn't have anything for. So if you don't have a contractor, my advice is if you don't have a contractor that deals with restoration and knows that process, and knows the people to partner up with, can they fix your home and get it back to the way that it was? Sure. Can they build your home? Sure. But it's gonna be I think it's gonna be a process.
Yeah, it'll be longer.
It's gonna be
if
a
they're not
long,
familiar.
extended process. So that's what we had to learn as a contractor, is we needed to get people alongside of us that did the things that we weren't professionals at.
Do insurance companies typically pay for adjusters, or is that out of our pocket then?
So your insurance company will have their own adjuster that's representing their interest and evaluating the information provided to them on their behalf. What I do as a public adjuster is represent your interest. And so you would pay me to do that for you. My cost is not going to be covered under your policy. It may be recoupable in some certain situations, but just like engineer costs, don't expect it to be, don't hope for it to be. Understand going into it that this is a cost that you're going to have to bear, and that the insurance company is not going to automatically pick up the tab.
Is
say-
it paid up front or is it paid?
No, it's a contingency fee. So we charge as the claim is paid, based on whatever percentage we're charging at.
There's a question in the back that hasn't been asked yet. Go ahead.
Okay, we had damage to our house, we had a contract, actually came out today, we haven't heard what, but our main problem is, we have outbuildings, we have a barn, total, two-story barn. I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
We can't, we've got horses that we're trying to pay board on and stuff now, we have, and just,
So those are incurred costs, and talking to one of these two individuals here, that's where you need representation, because you don't know the legalities of your policy. And after this, you talk to either one of these two here, and they can help you out. That's a really hard place to be in. I'm incredibly sorry for that.
Eventually your policy will make you whole on that if your insurance carrier is doing the right thing. But there's gonna be some stress with moving around the animals and finding temporary housing for them. Most commercial ranch or even residential policies that cover livestock are gonna have additional coverages for exactly what you're dealing with. That doesn't make it easier to deal with. But most policies are gonna have coverage for the costs that you're incurring to do that. But finding the people to do those things is definitely going to be something that everybody here is gonna have to go through, finding the right experts and finding the right people to help.
because the general contractor for the house ain't gonna know how to do
No.
barns.
Yeah.
Well,
You probably fix the barns.
They should be able to, a general contractor should be able to get with somebody to rebuild that barn. I mean, they should be able to, as far as the rebuilding and reconstruction, they should be able to handle that.
I agree.
Yeah, it's just getting with the insurance company and making sure they're speaking the same language, right? Is maybe some part of it.
I don't necessarily agree. If it's like a post frame building, generally the contractors that do that exclusively do that. So you may have to find a different contractor for your post frame building if it is, or if it's a traditional like round roof or Gothic style barn.
There was a barn built in the 1940s, and so it was a big two-story long barn.
Yeah, you're unfortunately, you're not gonna find someone that builds those barns.
But you'll find people who build barns like it. It might not be the same.
Correct. So you can get close, and likely the person, you're correct, likely the person who builds that barn or something close to it is probably not gonna be the same one that's working on your house. It could be, right, or you could work through the general contractor that's working on your house to find a subcontractor that specializes in that type of building.
But does that go back then into the claim side of it, where now that becomes kind of a different monster versus policy limits coverage, right? Because an expectation of what could be versus the reality that people just don't build it anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So how does that work?
Do you know if you have a farm and ranch policy or if you have a homeowner's insurance policy?
I think a homeowner's policy, and then it has for buildings, you know.
For
buildings.
Yeah, that's
Structures.
Yeah, it might not apply stock coverage.
yeah.
Again, that's the questions, right? That's the questions that people have. That's why we're here. Is if you have a question, by all means.
So most
look into
homeowners
it.
policies have
it's a
a
thing.
10% limit on other structures, and that 10% limit is the 10% of the dwelling limit. So if you have a $500,000 dwelling limit, the standard coverage for other structures would only be 10% of that, so $50,000. Nebraska is also a value policy law, so if that barn was wholly destroyed, they should just pay out the limits and be done with it. And you know, that's all you could likely get on the other structures.
Buildings are up for 200,000.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
that's good, if you
So I
have
would say-
scheduled coverage.
Is that something like someone like her, they could call you and maybe do a
Absolutely.
policy review?
Yeah.
So,
100%.
so for people like yourself, right, that don't understand, that you're not sure what you have, that might be where you reach out to Kate and say, hey, could you do a policy review for me? Send over your policy to him, he can take a look, and then he can speak more, you know, directly to what your guys'
There's a
situation.
QR code here that if you want to scan it, you can fill out name, telephone number, etc. You have an opportunity to go on a calendar, find a time that works with you.
Okay.
And then same thing for anyone here. If you have questions and want to review and maybe just not policy, you can get in touch with any of these guys here directly. Or if you want to fill that out and maybe we need to get some other guys involved and we can get you guys, get everybody in the right direction. We're at time. I don't know
I
if
feel
you
like there's
guys
a couple more
want a
questions.
few more minutes.
We're here for you guys.
Yeah,
We're
for
here
sure.
for you guys. So.
Bill says, yes, sir, you've been waiting.
Do you have any recommendations for how to find a restoration general contractor? I've been calling people for the last week or so and getting very few return calls.
Yeah, I've got two right here. There's two guys right here in the front of the room that I know that both do that, and then I've got some contacts too if you need it, but you can talk to them and I can help you out too, you can reach out to me.
I piggyback on this. In Nebraska, we have 4 types of licenses for contractors. With E-license, where you spend $100 and get your license. Those are the guys who do roofing, siding, gutters, and windows. Okay, so if I want, I can send you down and get your E-license.
Alright.
I should call myself a general contractor.
I need to learn how to put a roof on.
Okay. The D license, they've eliminated.
Yep.
The C license, Valley Boys had a C, correct?
I believe so.
And Steve was an awesome roofer there, and he did everything. So their C license allows you to build up to 3 stories on a residential house. A B license allows you to do 3 stories on a house, and it allows you to do some commercial. An A license, which is excuse my French, a hell of a test to pass, allows you to build the Empire State Building right in the middle of the street. Commercial.
No,
So-
that's right.
But it doesn't matter what license I have, if they don't have restoration storm experience, they're finding at a disadvantage. So one, when you interview these general contractors, I can do all that. I don't know if they're used. Do they know what the word exactly means?
Right.
Well, I have no. Walk your way. The other thing is you're what we call the least sophisticated consumer. Unfortunately, that rule applies to collections, but can be transferred over here. Your skill set and knowledge is less than what these guys are. Now, maybe you're an insurance agent. Your skill set and knowledge is a lot more than mine. I'm the least sophisticated individual. So, stay in your lane. You don't have time to take off work, manage all these subs.
So when you hire a general contractor, as the lady in the back was talking about the outbuildings, the general contractor takes over the claim with your guidance and your partnership. He gets all the subcontractors. So you're not out there trying to find, oh, I heard this guy's good. Forget that. This is what that guy does. When he hits his limits, he goes to these guys, and they take over. So not all general contractors are the same. I carry an A license. I'm not building the Empire State Building. I want nothing to do with it.
So to answer your question, it's difficult, right? I mean, it is difficult to find the right guy and the right contractor. You know, I've had to find contractors on my own stuff, my own jobs. It's difficult to find guys.
You gotta find the right guys.
You gotta find the right guy.